Good morning. I'm Patty O'Boyle. I'm a consultant in information security and technology. And we thank you very much for joining us today. I'm going to ask each of our panelists to do a brief introduction. Rich?
Hi, I'm Rich Baich. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer here at AT&T.
Carrie?
Hi, I'm Carrie Mills, and I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at Southwest Airlines.
Juan?
Juan Rodriguez, Chief Information Security Officer for Comerica Bank.
Okay, we're going to jump right into some questions for our panel, and we're going to try to leave some time at the end for questions. We're seeing a constant evolution in the threat landscape, including cyber attacks used in real-world conflicts. What emerging threats are you most interested in or surprised by? Juan?
Well, it's a great question. For us in the banking industry, given the nature of the business, digital identity is a key aspect for us that we pay a lot of attention to. And then, as we've seen in the last few years, it is evolving. It is one of those things that is going to continue to evolve due to the multi-platform aspect of digital identity. For us, we've seen so far digital identity being compromised through social engineering tactics that are much more sophisticated than in previous years. What that means is that people are taking advantage of social media to attack corporations, to get intelligence through social media for attacking corporations. So we're looking at a multitude of vectors, such as deepfake, as we know today has been on the news this year alone, voice synthesis as well. That is going to continue to mature and is going to continue to be something that we look at very, very deeply.
Rich?
So from a geopolitical standpoint, there are a lot of lessons learned from the recent and ongoing Ukraine-Russia conflict. One of those lessons is as we look at the future for other potential geopolitical conflicts, there is a belief that those allies or those entities that come to the aid of somebody on the other side of a geopolitical conflict can be expected to potentially have some disruptions in their infrastructure as tangential targeting, as organizations and countries come together sometimes to support a different entity during a conflict. And as a result of that, more and more critical infrastructures of any nation around the world will probably become more of a target in the future as the empowerment of cyber continues to grow and influence current and future geopolitical conflicts.
For me, the supply chain is a big deal in aviation. It takes a village to run an airline. I don't think I realized how many things have to come together for things to work. Like we got to get our planes in the right place. We got to get our flight attendants and pilots in the right place. We got to get the baggage in the right place. We got to get our customers in the right place. And somehow that works every day, 5,000 times a day for flights. So for me, the supply chain is a concern for me from a threat perspective, because at first it was really a targeted supply chain attack. Like we talk about Target a lot as an example through, for the last 10 years, they came in through an HVAC provider and were able to target. But now, when we have like SolarWinds, who knows who's using SolarWinds right now? Are we asking companies that we partner with if they're using a SolarWinds type product, and the blast radius is just so much larger? So a lot of large companies who have mature cybersecurity programs can respond quicker to this, but we have some really small vendors that we have to partner with because they provide a very specific thing in the aviation industry. And how are their cyber programs? Are they able to fund it? Are they able to respond when something like this happens?
So what are the key trends that you see when it comes to addressing these threats? Juan?
So the old strategy of defense in depth continues to play a significant role. But we're looking at it slightly different than, let's say, 20 years ago. Because the strategy, although it's effective, but we need to look at it all the way from the perimeter to the person to the data. each of those components has a set of strategy that we need to think through from a defense perspective. How do we build countermeasure at the person's sort of control? So that continues to be the key aspects for us. The continued verification of what you believe is true, whether that is data integrity or the person that you're doing business with, continues to be key for us, especially in the banking industry where everything is so digital and as well as people-driven to some extent. So that to me continues to be the trend and is going to continue with the evolution of, like I said, zero trust or any of those additional mechanisms is going to continue to be a key focus for banking overall.
Okay, Rich?
You know, when you think about our objective, it's to drive up the cost of an adversary. And, you know, one of those controls in the defense in-depth structure is multi-factor authentication. Something you have, something you are, something you know type of approach. And although we've been implementing this across the industry for many years, unfortunately, you have to also take it to the next level and think about phish-resistant MFA. And changing the way that you do MFA and advancing the way that you may have done MFA just because the adversaries and the bad actors have figured out how to circumvent it. But the key point about MFA is when you look at it in the solution that you choose, how does it transcend the MITRE attack framework to mitigate and drive up the costs and the techniques that are required for a bad actor to potentially, you know, try to do some type of exploitation of your environment. So again, I think we're going to see, and we need to move towards even greater phish-resistant MFA through the use of things like security keys or other things that can really empower the defender, not just the defender, the user, to prevent potential exploitation of their credentials.
Yeah, and I'm going to stick to the third-party theme. We all, as security professionals, have probably asked someone to fill out a standardized vendor security questionnaire or filled out a standardized security questionnaire, and I wouldn't say they're standardized. You know, every company has their own flavor. Really, service providers, I feel bad because they're you know, there's whole teams and all they do is fill those out. So I really want to try to push the industry. I mean, a little bit of vendor security reviews or security theater. It's, you know, the person that's filling it out. Do they have the knowledge? You know, is it the sales rep? Is it the CISO? You know, who's really completing these forms? So at Southwest Airlines, we're really looking towards using a standardized questionnaire. And to me, the standardized means there's a questionnaire out there that anyone can go fill out at any time, and hopefully other companies start using it. So we're using a platform called SIG. And if we, you know, we have a new vendor, we're onboarding them, or, you know, we're checking in with them, they might have filled it out before. So they just go in and they're like, oh, all my answers look good and they're accurate. Or, hey, this is the first time I filled this out. I'm going to fill it out this time. It might take a little bit of time, but then hopefully you know, the ecosystem starts using it. So the next time they have to go to another vendor, they already have the answers to those questions, and it saves them time. We're also looking at some open source tools. So, you know, instead of going to, you know, we ask the vendor to fill out a questionnaire, and we're trusting that their answers are accurate. But how do we, now that there's more data out there than ever, how do we use these open source forums or maybe you know, paid commercial things to gather data about that company? Maybe, you know, get some of the answers for ourselves, but also verify some of the answers that are true. To see if they're true. And, you know, it's a big topic right now. And, you know, I go to the board meetings and I present, and they're like, how are you going to solve third-party risk management? You know, it's a big concern in cyber. It's a big concern in IT for resiliency. So I think as a community, we all have to come together to, you know, to figure out how to move, you know, how we make sure others are secure and protect our companies.
Thanks. I'm going to switch gears a little bit now. And ask, how have each of you seen the public-private sector partnership evolve to tackle threats, both from nation states and other really capable threat actors? And what's working best, and how can we get better? Juan?
That's a great question, Patty. It has been my experience since you know, 15, 20 years ago, that we have improved the relationships between public and private sector, primarily out of necessity, if you think of that. The reason for that is because I think both sides realize that we need each other. We need the private and public sector to work together to address the threats that we're facing. That has led to a trust between both sides that is yielding significant benefits today. From my own experience, we work very closely with local and state and federal government agencies. Our threat intelligence team on a daily basis is collaborating with either a government agency or a peer institution. So when you think of cyber intelligence overall, it is the holistic ecosystem, including the public sector, that is yielding the benefits that we need. So that has been a big shift from years ago.
Rich?
You know, it's kind of ironic. We've been talking about private-public partnership since the 1990s, Clinton administration, PDD 63, I think, is what established it. And we've gotten better. There are countless channels to share intelligence and collaborate that are available. There's various presidential directives out there that drive how we're supposed to be doing it. I just think now it's time to consolidate and simplify, because you may have a county, a state, and a federal potential ISAC of sharing out there, not to mention your own industry. So I think there's an opportunity to actually do some consolidation. But we're doing pretty good with intelligence. The stuff that comes out through the different channels, the joint bulletins, CISA, NSA alerts, FBI alerts, all those things are getting much better. The information in it, everything from hunt techniques to hunt guides. But I think we can still go further. I think we need to be pushing what are recommended builds for certain platforms, secure builds to help. We do have some out there for different things like routers and different things like that, but we can do better there. And then we also need to move to action. How do we operationalize and distribute out through all these various channels that we have in touch points actionable code? Our challenge is with a lot of the exploits that come out, either organizations don't know how to, or certain organizations are being very creative to define the code and the actions to take, and we've got to get better at distributing. Of course, it's always going to have to be an opt-in, because we're talking about potential live code or discovery techniques for organizations. And it's very critical for the small and medium businesses, because they just don't have the size of the workforce. So I think that's where our opportunity is next as we go through public-private sharing, is to make it more actionable and operationalized.
Yeah, and I agree with both of you. I'm a huge fan of ISACs. And I think I always encourage my team, share out, because we might be next and we might need that information for ourselves. We actually have it in our cybersecurity incident response plan that we're going to share. So we already, when we get a new lawyer that, is supporting cyber, I'm like, read the incident response plan, because this is what we're going to do. Now, we're always going to want to protect Southwest, but one of the first things we want to do is to share that information out to help protect someone. The aviation sector is probably, when it comes to like public-private relationships, a little bit behind financial services. A lot of other CISOs, my peers at other airlines, came from financial services, and they just keep talking about how we're like 10 years behind. Aviation is very highly regulated, but they're just getting into the arena of regulating cyber. So we're trying to figure out the government agencies, and they're trying to figure out us. So when you talk about trust, we're in that building stage. And what we're trying to do is educate our regulators and other public partners on information that we need to make it actionable, like Rich was saying. Like, we don't need a whole CISA report that's 10 pages for us to take action. If they have some like IOCs and TTPs because someone else is reporting an event, we don't have to know who it's attributed to. We can take action on those real quick, and we can get more data later. So really, that's what we're trying to do across our sector, is just educate what actionable intelligence means to us as a commercial company so we can better protect our critical sector.
So I'm going to go back to something that Carrie spoke about earlier and talk about third-party risk. We all make use of a lot of vendors, large and small, and how can we make ourselves resilient to potential failings with our technology partners? Carrie?
Yeah, so I did talk about this a little bit, but one thing that we're doing that's helped us in many situations, including CrowdStrike, which we didn't run CrowdStrike at the time, but we tier all of our tools in our environment, including third-party partners. So we start at tier 0 and we go up to tier 4. So tier 0 is our most critical. So any of our tier 0, tier 1, or tier 2 third-party partners, we have backup procedures, and it could be manual, and it could be that we can really run the backup procedure for an hour. We couldn't sustain it for days. So that's really been one of our approaches on these smaller niche vendors where we can't go to another partner to get a backup solution. We will run stuff manually for a little bit, and so just putting those plans in place, so hopefully we never have to use them, but if we do, we can protect our business and get up and running as fast as we can.
So when we look at and we think about third-party risk, I think large technology companies need to be sure they're focused on secure by design and making sure they have ways to maintain and update their software. Look, it's very difficult. We all know there are hardware and software updates that are needed. And we just need to make sure, vendors across the entire supply chain spend time and build into their operations how they're going to make sure their products can be updated and a time frame suitable from the time of identification to the time of remediation. So although we're always focused on evaluating our third parties and understanding them, I think we also need to be pushing out and holding those vendors accountable to actually ship and maintain their products from a secure by design standpoint.
So shift gears again. How are you finding and retaining cybersecurity talent, and what skills are you particularly looking for now? Juan, we'll start with you.
So there's no secret that cybersecurity talent is scarce. It's something that we all struggle to acquire and retain. Our strategy at Comerica is to use a multi-market strategy. We recently opened a new site here in Frisco, where we are building and have a state-of-the-art sort of a site where we're building more and bringing more young talent and talent in the area, as this is a very rich market. But we also are concentrating on building teams from the bottom up, and that means partnering with different colleges and university where we provide an 18-month program where graduates can come in and try different teams and ultimately be hired permanently into a particular team, as well as continuing to weigh the benefits of remote work and so forth. From a talent perspective, threat hunting continues to be, and cyber intelligence, cyber defense operations overall continues to be a very niche talent that we look for.
From our standpoint, look, we have a unique opportunity at AT&T. 1/3 of the world's traffic comes across our network. If you are a cyber operator and you want fast-paced, always conflicting opportunities associated with entities who want to test your environment, it's a wonderful place to work. But we focus around that to provide a diversity of skill sets and opportunities for our workforce, from recruiting, to retention. And we develop programs to really drive what we're doing. Recently, we did one focus just on women in cyber, right, to make sure that we're focused on different areas and different diversity groups within the organization. So, whether you're a veteran, right, or whether you're a female, or whether you have any type of ethical diversity, we see tremendous value in that skill set and the experience that those individuals bring. But the other key point is investing in your team members. And if I recall, like this year already, our team members have gone and completed over 50,000 hours of training in the platforms that we provide to them. So that's kind of how we approach it, and we're always recruiting, and we're always looking to retain the best talent.
Yeah, for us, one of the things we really focus on at Southwest overall, and not in just cyber, is our culture. And we want it to be a fun place to work. You want to come to work every day. But the last couple of years, we've really been focusing on belonging, and bringing all the diverse individuals together and making them feel welcome to a part of a team. And we've really seen it paid off. It sounds kind of silly, and it's those soft, touchy things, but people want to come to work. And another way that we're doing it tactically is we've been doing it for years, but we've really focused on automating the little things. You implement a new tool, you implement half of it, and then you're doing these manual tasks on the side. Well, those manual tasks, adding someone to a group, that's not fun. So how do we make sure that we're automating the tasks that people don't want to do anymore? So the analysts and the engineers are doing stuff that's fun, and they have to think about it, and they have to solve problems. So that's been a real focus for us, so people feel like they belong, and then they're more engaged in their work.
Thanks. We're going to do a lightning round here. So quick question. What makes you most optimistic about the future?
For me, artificial intelligence. I think is going to create lots of opportunities for us. The concept of self-healing security infrastructure probably will come alive during the AI evolution. So that will be my take on it.
Okay. Carrie?
Mine is what I've spoke about before, is just continuing the information sharing and making our industry stronger and other industries stronger, and just continuing that relationship to get the information we need from government entities or even commercial feeds to make our defense in depth stronger to protect our networks.
Talent, the people in this room, the people that are online, the people that can't get to here because they're dealing with operational issues. I think the will of this profession and the future of the individuals that are going through colleges and high schools today and are focused and energized by cyber will be the differentiator for the future.
Okay. Natasha, we have time for a couple of questions.
Excellent. We do. Do we have any in the room before I go straight to the web? If we do, just raise your hand. Okay.
Sure. Rich, so quick question for you. You mentioned at the very beginning that global conflict generates a fertile ground for a counter response or higher threat environment to ourselves. That seems to imply a state actor. I'm curious, am I reading that statement correct, and therefore does that speak to higher cooperation with state and government entities, or is it a broader risk that you're identifying there?
Yeah, I think some of the lessons learned when you look at the Russian-Ukrainian conflict and the discussions that are being had are around the fact that when conflicts arise in the future, and whether it's organizations or entities or countries come to the aid of who is on that conflict, their chance of having some type of retaliatory action associated with cyber for their company, for their country, or even for potential individuals, the expectation is that will even further increase than what we've seen already in the Ukraine-Russia conflict.
Any more in the room? Okay, this one's for Carrie. How do you plan for the type of cascading effect that occurs when just one element of your operations is compromised?
Yeah, that's a great question. We practice resiliency all the time. I really think it comes down to having those backup plans and practicing. And from an IT perspective or a cyber perspective, we don't want, one piece of our business to fail and we can't recover. I mean, we had a major outage in December of 2022. Many said Southwest Airlines canceled Christmas for many in the United States. But that was a huge learning time for us and how we can never have that happen again. And really, it's turned into tabletop exercises, documenting what our manual procedures are, making sure the right people are on the phone at the right time, having the senior leaders get together to make decisions quickly. So it's really been a lot of practice and a lot of like looking inward at ourselves to see how we can get better.
Perfect. I think this one's for anyone. What are some examples of open source tools for standardized security questionnaires?
I think you mentioned.
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier. So we use one called SIG. That's one that's out there. In aviation, they're actually, a lot of companies are starting to come together to make their own. So there might actually be some out there that your industry has come together to try to put together to make that standardized process come alive.
I would say that we also use SIG, but think of NIST framework. You have all of the controls, all of the questions that you need to formulate a real robust framework for any aspect of your security program.
I'll make a little bit of a prediction. So when it comes to looking at AI from a third-party perspective, a very difficult third-party program to do, we probably will see something similar to what we've seen in the past when it came to organizations that would get ratings and utilize to help us understand test one, satisfy many, meaning one entity gets a review, and then just for a small fee, you kind of pay for it. As we look at the emergence of AI into our third-party supply chain, it's going to be very difficult to risk rate that and understand that. So I see that becoming, I'll call it a future business probably for several vendors.
Thank you. Any in the room before I keep going? Okay. Since nation states have been mentioned and government collaboration has been mentioned, could you say more on the role of the insurance industry in cybersecurity, since many policies exclude nation state and put the burden on the customer?
I'll take that, being a former insurance CISO, I think. So there's this thing called a wartime clause that's going to be in any insurance. That has been around kind of forever. I don't see that necessarily, going away. The reality of this is organizations need to be prepared to protect themselves, right? The government's job is not to necessarily protect entities from potential individual attacks. Large-scale things, the government obviously will and always get involved in. So, insurance is just one method of risk mitigation, right? Of any good risk management program, you can choose to address a risk, you can choose to mitigate a risk, and in the case of cyber insurance, it's just one technique of your overall risk management program. A lot of people think it's specific to cyber, but there is multiple insurance policies that organizations have for the various risk elements associated with running any business.
So we're finished. So I want to thank you guys for coming today, and thanks to the panel for participating, and look forward to the rest of the day. Thanks.